Hey guys, just a quick little video today on the problem of expensive motorcycles, of which we're all guilty of. These three bikes have just been dropped off by the guys at Moving Motorcycles who shipped our bikes on the various tours this year. The G650 GS was the bike I used in Morocco, so we had 2 weeks in Morocco shipping the bike down to Malaga, exploring Morocco. The Marini Escape was a bike we shipped down to Slovenia to lead that tour down through the Balkans. And then come back and drop the bikes off Slovenia and come back. And then this Vogue 300 Rally is a bike that Ben, who was helping me on the Balkans trip, used. And all bikes here, I mean, I paid $2,250 for the BMW. The Escape's now probably worth $2,750 or so. You know, the bottom's dropped out of the Escape market, even though it's a great bike. And the Vogue 300 Rally, $2,500. So these are three affordable budget bikes that are very capable, very usable for motorcycling adventure. And why I really like them is because any of these three bikes, say the worst thing can happen on a tour, you know, maybe you'll have an accident, maybe there's political unrest, maybe your mother dies, a grandparent dies, whatever, something takes poorly back at home, which means you have to abandon ship and go home. The beauty of the cheaper, affordable, disposable bikes, and I guess I'm going to use that word disposable because that's effectively what they are. If I had to leave that G650 GS in Morocco and I'm down £2,200, my life goes on. I'm not at a big loss. Same with the Escape, same as the Vogue 300. And I think disposability is a huge factor in what makes a great travel bike. Now we can talk about performance and suspension and ground clearance and engine power and all the other things that people use to measure the capability or the success of a motorcycle, but sometimes on an actual trip when you're out beyond your comfort zone in countries where there's not fully comprehensive insurance, for example, sometimes disposability, and that's obviously relevant to what your worth is, what, you know, how much money you've got, but disposability is a huge factor, which is why these bikes, although maybe not best in class, they were perfect bikes to take beyond your comfort zone, take to places where there's only third-party insurance in place, which was, Morocco, you can only get third-party insurance on a vehicle. In the Balkans, when we went into Bosnia and Montenegro, green card only covered for third-party on some people's insurance. So all these bikes were perfect for the trip. And why that's relevant and why I just want to do a little video is I've got a coast-to-coast America trip going next year, next June. Obviously still spacers on it, and the spacers because, and there were spacers anyway, but there's more spacers now because America, or the insurance provider in America that previously insured overseas bikes in America on a fully comp basis, have withdrawn from the market, which means the only provision for insurance at the minute is a third party only policy, which has meant that the people with, say, £20,000 bikes, £25,000 bikes, or less, £15,000 bikes, have dropped out because the risk of losing the bike, having it stolen, having it written off, it's not worth it. They can't afford to lose that bike. So in my mind, what that bike has done is held you back from going on the adventure that you wish to have, for the fact that the conditions aren't ideal for you to take that bike. You know, the insurance isn't there and that. And I think it's easy to get obsessed with buying the best, the latest and greatest bikes. But there comes a point where if that bike, that purchase, inhibits you from going on the adventure, then it's the wrong bike. And therefore, the best bike, coming back full circle, is the one that's most disposable to you. Because I think you've got to consider, if you go beyond European borders, you effectively haven't got any insurance. I'm following Sean and Emily on the GSA 1300s. They're doing a cracking job of going around the world on that big expensive bike. But I'm certain they're under no illusion that if that bike gets stolen or written off, then they're 25 grand down on a bike, which is a choice you make. Can you afford to lose 25 grand, or can you afford to lose £2,500? And all I'm saying is, and all I'm giving you to think about is, if your bike makes you risk averse, it makes you step back from the adventure from using the bike for the purpose you bought it from, then it's the wrong bike. And that's not to say I've got something against expensive bikes. I've not. I've only got something against expensive bikes if they're holding you back. I mean, we had Rob on the Balkan trip this year. He was on a Multistrada V4 RS, a 30 odd grand motorcycle, which obviously he could afford to use because he took it trail riding and he just rode it, and he just, he rode it in a way that he enjoyed riding it. And obviously he could afford to do that, or he was is of that disposition that the adventure was worth the financial risk of the bike. If you're in the opposite position where the bike isn't worth the adventure, or if that makes sense, then maybe maybe you ought to consider a different bike. So yeah, that's why these 3 bikes here that have just been delivered back, caked in mud, were perfect for those trips in Balkans and Morocco, for the fact that if they hadn't come back on that van, or if they'd have got damaged in transit, or if they'd have got stolen in Marrakesh or written off in Bosnia, there would have been no big tears shed, because ultimately the beauty of them is the disposable bikes. People might be saying, well, £2,000 is a lot to give away. It is. I'm not saying that £2,000 is nothing, but it's that risk and reward, isn't it? Everything in life comes down to risk and reward. And if the reward is not worth the risk of the bike that you've got, time to swap bikes. But these are all going to get cleaned up. They all need a bit of a freshen up. This one needs chain and sprockets. That one needs tyres. That one needs nothing. Let's go again on that G650 GS. What a cracking motorcycle that is. Like the bike that, the fanfare of adventure, the image of adventure overlooked that bike because it just was too insipid, too dowdy. It wasn't grand enough. It didn't celebrate wealth enough in the way that the big GSs did. But look at it now. That bike will do everything that anyone wants to do on it. Whether it's a bike for you or not, doesn't matter. But the bike is capable of doing anything you want to do on it. £2,500. What's the best adventure bike in the world? The one that you can afford to use. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Cheers.